One during the planning phase of a penetration test, which document explicitly defines the systems, networks, and applications that are authorized for testing. A. Rules of Engagement, ROE. B. Master Service Agreement, MSA. C. Non-Disclosure Agreement, NDA. D. Statement of Work. 2. Which reconnaissance technique involves querying public DNS servers to gather information about a target's domain without directly interacting with the target systems? A. Active reconnaissance. B. Passive reconnaissance. C. Social engineering. D. Vulnerability scanning. 3. In the context of penetration testing, what is the primary purpose of using a C2 command control server? A. To host the penetration testing report. B. To manage compromised systems remotely. C. To perform vulnerability scanning. To store backup data. 4. Which of the following best describes a living off the land attack technique? A. Using custom malware to compromise systems. B. Exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities. C. Using legitimate system tools and utilities for malicious purposes. D. Performing physical intrusion into a facility. 5. When performing a web application penetration test, which tool is most appropriate for intercepting and modifying HTTP/HTTPS requests? A. B. Burp Suite. C. Metasploit. D. Wireshark. 6. What type of vulnerability exists when user input is directly concatenated into SQL queries without proper sanitization? A. Cross-site scripting XSS. A. SQL injection. C. Cross-site request forgery. D. Remote code execution, RCE. 7. Which of the following is the primary purpose of establishing a baseline during a penetration test? A. To determine the organization's security budget. B. To compare system performance before and after testing. C. To identify normal network behavior for anomaly detection. D. To create a backup of all systems. 8. During a penetration test, you discover that a web application stores session tokens in URL parameters. What vulnerability does this represent? A. Broken authentication. B. Security misconfiguration. Insecure deserialization. D. XML external entity. 9. Which of the following is the correct order of phases in a penetration testing engagement? A. Exploitation, planning, reconnaissance, reporting. B. Planning, reconnaissance, exploitation, reporting. C. Reconnaissance, planning, exploitation, reporting. D. Planning, exploitation, reconnaissance, reporting. 10. What is the primary difference between a vulnerability assessment and a penetration test? A. Vulnerability assessments are automated. Penetration tests are manual. B. Vulnerability assessments identify vulnerabilities. Penetration tests exploit them. C. Penetration tests are cheaper than vulnerability assessments. D. There is no difference between them. 11. Which port is commonly associated with the SMB, Server Message Block Protocol? A. Port 22. B. Port 80. C. Port 445. D. Port 3389. 12. In wireless penetration testing, what does WPS stand for? A. Wireless protection system. B. Wi-Fi protected setup. C. Wireless packet sniffer. D. Wi-Fi password security. 13. Which technique involves sending specially crafted packets to determine which ports are open on a target system? A. Banner grabbing. B. Port scanning. C. Packet sniffing. D. R poisoning. 14. What type of attack involves tricking users into clicking on hidden elements on a web page? A. Cross-site scripting XSS. SQL injection. Clickjacking. D. Session hijacking. 15. Which of the following is not a valid scope limitation that should be documented before a penetration test? A. Excluded IP addresses. B. Testing time windows. C. Penetration tester's salary. Off-limit systems. 16. In privilege escalation, what does the term horizontal privilege escalation mean? Gaining root or administrator access. B. Accessing resources of another user at the same privilege level. C. Escalating from user to system level. D. Bypassing authentication mechanisms. 17. In web application testing, what does the acronym SSTI stand for? A. Secure Socket Transfer Interface. B. Server-side template injection. C. System Security Testing Interface. D. Stored site transfer injection. 18. What is the purpose of using a pivot or pivoting technique during a penetration test? A. To rotate between different testing methodologies. B. To use a compromised system to access other network segments. C. To change the scope of the engagement. D. To modify the penetration testing report. 19. Which of the following best describes credential stuffing? A. Using stolen username password pairs on multiple sites. B. Brute forcing passwords with a dictionary. C. Phishing users for their credentials. D. Intercepting credentials in transit. 20. In the context of web application testing, what does CSRF stand for? A. Cross-site request fabrication. B. Client-side request forgery. C. Cross-site request forgery. D. Client-server request framework. Which technique involves manipulating the serialized objects that applications use to pass data? A. Buffer overflow. B. Insecure deserialization. C. Injection. D. LDA injection. 22. What is the primary purpose of using Responder during a penetration test? A. To scan for open ports. To capture NTLM hashes on a network. C. To perform SQL injection attacks. To crack WPA2 passwords. 23. Which of the following is a characteristic of a black box penetration test? A. The tester has full knowledge of the target environment. B. The tester has no prior knowledge of the target environment. C. The tester has partial knowledge of the target environment. The tester only tests physical security. 24. What does OSINT stand for in penetration testing? A. Operating System Intelligence. B. Open Source Intelligence. C. Operational Security Intelligence. D. Organized System Integration. 25. Which vulnerability allows an attacker to include files from a remote server into a web application? A. Local file inclusion. B. Remote file inclusion. C. Directory traversal. D. Path manipulation. 26. Which type of malware analysis involves executing the sample in a controlled environment to observe its behavior? A. Static analysis. B. Dynamic analysis. C. Heuristic analysis. Signature-based analysis. 27. What is the purpose of fuzzing in penetration testing? A. To hide penetration testing activities from detection. B. To send malformed or unexpected input to find vulnerabilities. C. To encrypt communication channels. D. To perform social engineering attacks. 28. Which Nmap scan type uses the TCP three-way handshake but doesn't complete it? A. TCP connect scan. S. Not SU. D. scan. 29. What type of social engineering attack involves following an authorized person into a restricted area? A. Phishing. Vishing. Tailgating. Pretexting. 30. Which of the following describes a watering hole attack? A. Attacking a specific high-value target directly. B. Compromising websites frequently visited by the target organization. Poisoning a network's DHCP server. D. Flooding a network with traffic. 31. In the OWASP Top 10, what does A01 or 2021 Broken Access Control refer to? A. Failures in authentication mechanisms. B. Failures in properly enforcing user permissions. C. SQL injection vulnerabilities. D. Cross-site scripting issues. 32. Which post-exploitation technique involves maintaining access to a compromised system? Pivoting, persistence, enumeration, deprivilege escalation. 33. What is the primary purpose of the Mimikatz tool? A. Network scanning. B. Web application testing. C. Extracting credentials from memory. D. Wireless penetration testing. 34. Which of the following is not typically included in a penetration testing report? A. Executive summary. B. Methodology used. C. Detailed findings with evidence. D. Source code of exploits used. 35. In the context of API testing, what does REST stand for? A. Remote execution security testing. B. Representational state transfer. C. Rapid exploitation security tool. D. Resource exploitation state transfer. 36. Which technique involves encoding payloads to evade detection by security controls? Obfuscation, encryption, compression, tokenization. 37. What is the purpose of using a canary token in security testing? A. To detect when an attacker accesses specific resources. B. To bypass firewall rules. C. To crack passwords faster. D. To perform port scanning. 38. Which vulnerability class involves manipulating how an application processes XML input? SQL injection. B. XML external entity. C. Cross-site scripting. D. Command injection. 39. In network penetration testing, what does ARP stand for? A. Advanced Routing Protocol. B. Address Resolution Protocol. C. Authenticated Request Protocol. D. Application Response Protocol.